This is the Cultural Fluency podcast with Angel Pretot, the French coach. That's me. And today in episode number 10, recorded on Christmas Eve 2021, I am with Imani Ustawi, whose name means faith and prosperity in Swahili, which is very fitting since you are an ordained minister, in addition to being an expert in clearing shame, unworthiness, breaking addictive cycles, sexual trauma and healing ancestral wounds, and repatterning family relationships. Wow, huge program. So can you please introduce yourself for the people who have never heard of you?
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. That was beautiful. Hi, everyone. I am Imani Ustawi, as Angel said, and yeah, I've been in the healing space for over a decade and the mental health and substance abuse space for that long as well. And my personal recovery and journey started when I was about 16, 17 years old. So now, obviously, we continue to heal. I continue to heal and to, be with whatever may arise. But I am gifted with the ability to teach from where I once was to help other people and to support them. And through God, through Christ, through the power of that, and it's a blessing. Truly, it's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me moving.
Right. Thank you. Well, that is so interesting to me. And like to my French mind, because this is called cultural fluency. So the whole point is to, rub cultures against each other and see how they can talk to each other and learn from each other. To my French mind, I'm like an ordained minister and an expert in healing sexual trauma. There's something there that I can't put together. I don't know if in the US it's normal, but it just, I don't know. How do you become an ordained minister and also an expert in healing all those wounds and particularly sexual trauma?
Yeah, I mean, like that's what Christ also did. So it's not that abstract, really. I think that there's been a lot of separation and a lot of like compartmentalization, and that's kind of what you just spoke to. Like, oh, this is supposed to be for this, and this is supposed to be for that. But like truly, and living from whatever, like we could be in a room filled with 10 ministers and like their reason for being a minister and their reason and their work and their mission is going to be completely different. So what my mission is and my work is to be able to work with those people who have had traumas like familial trauma, dysfunctional family, sexual trauma, be it by a family member or be it in childhood or older. And that's just what like God tasked me to, the people that God tasked me to work with, and through working through that and like being in those valleys myself. So for me, it just like makes sense in myself that those two things go together. And also more, like there's more that's always revealed to me. So it's not like I'm just in this box as well, but I'm here to be a conduit for the healing that's needed. And it's not me healing people, but me showing up to be present. So
I see. I'm just thinking what would happen if you would arrive in France one day and you start to try to explain this to the French. I'm like, wait. Because it's a country that has first a very strong anti-religion sentiment, and for the few people who are religious, most of them would be Catholic, although we do have a minority of Muslims and other religious minorities, but when we think of religion, we think of Catholicism. And just the country has like, I think they have a whole amount of like wounds to heal around that. So like, wow, that would be something if we would put you in touch with a typical French person. I do not consider myself a typical French person. For one thing, I live abroad. But that is so interesting. So you're not the one healing people. How do you help people concretely?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's what everyone is saying. And I really believe that's what gets us out of like the guru codependency cycle. And I just made that up, but it makes complete sense. And thinking that someone else is doing the healing for you. And it's not, I think that we all can have gifts as long as we've like spent that time really being able to like get past our human disposition and dysfunction to be able to get into our spiritual gifts and what we're here to do, and also using our human. And so in that, hold on one second, I literally just lost my train of thought. Will you ask me again?
How do you help people concretely? Like if someone comes to you with trauma, how do you work with that?
Okay, you asked it in a way that was like me being the one who's doing the healing. And so when people do, I'll ask the question from how I just heard you.
Right.
So when people come to me, they'll come to me in different ways. Like I worked in treatment and substance abuse, so people would find me through that avenue, or they would find me online, or in person, because I used to travel before the pandemic. I used to travel all over and do workshops and healings
Right.
and things like that. And now people find me from, like, they can find me online, or they just find me from where I am. I really believe in local community, and I also love the ability to reach out globally. But there is power in being able to impact the community in which you geographically live in as well.
Right. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Like, how do you work with the local community, and like, how do you balance global outreach and working with a very global community? Like, from a cultural fluency perspective, it's so interesting.
Yeah, I will honestly say that a lot has changed for me. Like 2017 to 2019, and even in the beginning of 2020, like I had this from March all the way up into December, this very like full schedule of travel with workshops and speaking. And that's what I did before that time, was speak and stuff. And so I always had workshops in my home, like, or at local healing places. So people always had somewhere to come in to me wherever I was. And so here in this here and now, in this iteration of how God has me to move my medicine, it's that I work alongside nonprofit organizations that work within social health, and social health is the other component of health when it comes to being able to bring community and connections to be able to support in death of despair. So I work alongside those. I'm on like boards of those. So I'm really truly within my community, and being able to partner with other nonprofits that are here. And then also allowing people to access me at a rate that is accessible. So that's another way that I do it locally. And then globally, it's that when people find me, I say yes, as long as it's like they are ready for the healing work that comes with working with me, and it seems like it's a good alignment for both of us. And so yeah, my website is imanirestored.com, and that's what I do. And if there are organizations that I work with that are more like global outreach, then I work with those as well. But I really am here to be of service and on mission. And so just, I'm ready. Would be the way that I would answer that, is like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to say yes. I'm ready to discern. I'm ready to be present.
So you make it work no matter the circumstances, basically, whether it's online or real life stuff, you just make it work. Would you say there's
if it's
go ahead.
If it's aligned, like I'm not just like out here as a martyr, like saying yes to everyone. It's like, if it truly is aligned and it feels right for both of us, then that, or all of us, because I work with groups and couples and stuff like that as well. And so, but yeah, it's been amazing to see. I mean, I've worked with people in Bali, I've worked with people in like Colombia, and like all of these different countries, and it's beautiful to be able to see that, like, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what language we speak, that when we meet in the container that which is set, when we're together, like it, like the healing and the power and what's to come through surpasses all of that, all time, space, language barriers, all of those things.
Wow, I have so many questions in my head right now. I will try to hold them all, because it went in like 3 different directions. Like, I have to ask about this. Okay, language, because that's, I mean, I'm a French coach for English speakers mostly. I mean, I work in English, and I work online as well. So I have a question for, like, is it different for you to work in real life versus working online? I've worked in real life ages ago, but not anymore. I've worked exclusively online now with people who are halfway across the globe most of the time. And in so many countries. So I want to know how you do that. But also I want to like go on the language path. Like, is there other languages that you speak? Do you also speak Swahili? I know that your name is Swahili.
No. And let me just
too bad.
Let me take a side note.
All right.
So Kwanzaa, we're in the season of Kwanzaa, and on the second day of Kwanzaa, culturally, we had the privilege and right to change our names from our slave masters' given names. And so in that, I took on this new name, which means faith, prosperity. So it's like, wherever I walk, wherever I go, whenever I speak, this is the energy in which I am moving in, and this is what I'm claiming. And I no longer identify with the name that I was given. So and it's all based in like true African culture and customs. And so I wanted for the name to be that. And so that's what that is. I speak English. And so when I say language barriers, it's like people are also speaking English, but it may be through like a thick accent. And it also may be through these like cultural things. I remember last year being on this, like I was speaking for this group that was people all over the world. And so one girl was like, this goes against like my religious beliefs. And so it's like how to meet people where they are, you know, with what they believe. I'm not trying to cram anything down anybody's throat or make them believe anything. I really believe in living as an example and as attraction over promotion, or like, you know, trying to force people to do stuff. But yeah, that's what I meant when I said like the language piece. It also was like the culture piece, which I know is you really speak to and know about. And you've been sharing with me the French piece.
right up my alley. I mean, I'm creating a program for learning French, and also I have this scholarship program where like I give away. Well, I mean, I would say we give away because it's one-to-one basis. So for each person who joins the program, I also give a scholarship to one student anywhere in the world. And we have this really varied community as a result. And so I can so relate to that. Like I break my head all day, like wondering, okay, like how to make sure that I'm not going to be disrespectful to any of the cultures that are involved. And also that other people are not going to inadvertently be disrespectful, because it's not like they mean to. But sometimes, you know, I have people from Africa, from Asia. Most of my one-to-one clients are from North America, and US and Canada. And it's just, yeah, it's something I think about a lot. So yeah, I'm happy to discuss that. Very happy. And yeah, like how would you say that your work is fundamentally different if it's online versus if it's in person, or is it fundamentally the same work?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that, and the work that I'm doing right now, the only difference is that like I can't physically accompany someone, you know, or physically soothe someone. And so it's really what's happening that's really miraculous through online is seeing how like I was never truly needed to like have to console someone when I trust that they truly do have what they need, that we can move through these really tough, highly emotional spaces. And that like my presence and like the spiritual support that I bring in and like their ability and capability, like they're totally safe and it's fine. And I think that was probably like my biggest concern was like, how do I accompany people through these big emotional experiences when I'm not physically there? Because that was like most of my training was like physical accompaniment and physical, like being able to physically soothe. And it just blew me away to where it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, it's just the energy, right? You don't need to physically touch the person, although it might be a better anchor if you're physically touching them. But if the energy is there and you have the intention, like it's also what I do with, well, more like what my hypnotherapist does with me. She's on the episode 1 of this podcast, and she's in the UK. I've never actually met her. I'm in Austria. And but we've been working together for 3 years, and it's incredible the work that we do together. And like you, she said that she does not heal, and that I'm the one doing the work. And yeah, I've had so many issues in my life with therapists or doctors or whatever. Like my track record with the medical establishment is appalling. And I'm just really happy. Like it's exceptional to find someone who's able to do this work. And I find that it works online. Definitely, it's better to have someone who's competent online than to have someone who's not as competent, but next to you. That's really clearly. And I'm willing to pay for it. Like I feel blessed that I am now able to afford the care that I need, as opposed to getting free stuff, because I mean, Europe, we get a lot of free healthcare, but it doesn't mean it's good. Unfortunately, that's the difference, especially for everything mental therapy. It's sometimes it does more bad than good. So yeah, it's really important to keep that in mind. So I'm really glad that we get to speak about that.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you have the resources that you need. And it does also break my heart that though there is free healthcare and resources, it isn't competent, or like the quality isn't appropriate for the needs of the people.
I mean, it depends. Like if for emergency care, they are absolutely amazing. Emergency physical care, great. Like if you get run over by a car, if you survive the first 1 hour, you probably will survive forever. But not forever, obviously, but like
forever, eternal life.
That's not what I mean. But yeah, that's what they're excellent at. I mean, it's what modern science is excellent at. Like, they're very good at emergency. They're not so good at everything chronic illness or psychological or mental or energetic illness. If I mean, they scoff if you say energy in front of them. So yeah. So how, like, free healthcare or like social healthcare, unfortunately, does not solve most of these problems. It sucks.
Yeah, and that seems, I mean, congruent with here as well. It's like, even though we don't have like total free healthcare yet, I'm gonna say yet because I want us to be able to have that. That like the symptoms and also the crisis situations are great, but it's then the underlying, right? Because that's what keeps things chronic, like the underlying, the social health aspect, the mental health aspect, and the emotional health. So it's great that there are then alternatives and people who are doing that, but I'm looking forward to that being like a gap that's bridged where they all are under the same umbrella and all of the same quality and respected the same. And
speaking the same language and not looking down on each other. Because it's a problem that we have with healthcare. I mean, yeah, like I mean, I'm not grateful for the healthcare I received because it was a train wreck. Like, I was misdiagnosed and so on. But at least I don't have debt. Like, that's the thing I think about. Like, if all that mess had happened to me in the US, I would probably have a pile of medical debt. So that's that. But yeah, like, I wish I hadn't lost years of my life in that mess.
Yeah, I worked at a queer centered, and I mean, it was queer based treatment facility for people that were transitioning. Either it was M to F or F to M. And so we did hormone therapy for them. And also in that, it was also mental health stabilization. So it was always like we had to, which I'm saying this because there is something that the world at large, mental health care workers at large, psychiatrists, medical doctors need to also understand that as these clients were doing the hormonal therapy, they were also getting their psych meds adjusted and changed to be able to actually be appropriate for them. And then also any additional supplements. But what I love that we did is that we really believed in the holistic approach of it all. So we had a psychiatrist that really did like natural supplementation along with like the psych meds, along with like the hormonal. And that was, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of controversy with all of that, but I'm like, it's not up to us to decide. This is what every single, like, I want everyone to be able to have this approach where it is total care. And so that's just like an example of like within the queer community. And I'm like, just again, pitching that I want this to, like, it's a whole picture of health. It's a total picture of health.
That sounds like Wonderland to me. We don't have that. Like, it's not a thing. It's like the psych meds are on one side looking down on the natural health who's trying to do what they can, but they're absolutely not respected. And the psych meds they think they're or like the doctors in general, they think they're the only one who have degrees. They don't even consider the training of the others to even exist. And there's a thing with this free healthcare situation, well, like sponsored public healthcare situation, is that it's like they anoint some branches and look down on others, because basically as soon as something is not paid by the state healthcare, because they just decide that they're not going to pay that, so anything natural is not paid, for example, then these are things that people tend to look down upon as well, because we think that if it was really needed or if it worked, we would get it paid by the social security. And it takes a lot of thinking to get out of this mindset, where basically, I mean, I'm not very convinced that everything that is paid for because of lobbies. Like, there are lobbies that are very powerful and they can get their way and they can get their substances paid for by the state healthcare. And well, you know, like, you're not going to get a lobby of St. John's Wort fighting against antidepressant or even fighting with antidepressant. Like, no, it's not going to happen. It's always going to be like medication. And like, it's I don't have a solution. I don't know where this conversation is going, but I just feel like I have to run to someone.
I love that this is happening, and I love that. And what I want to say to you is that, like, it may feel like, you know, like we're on this, like we're here having this insulated conversation. I want you to know, being a part of like this field, like social health, medical health, and mental health, that these have been conversations that like the doctors, the psychiatrists, all of these people have been having. So these are active conversations that are going on. And the facility that I was telling you about is the only one that's here, and like the message is getting spread. So it's like, this is just like a microcosm of the separation. Yes, it's of like, so what we're talking about though is like a microcosm of the separation that's been intricate in our societies forever, right? So it's just in this way we can see it. And so what we're tasked with is like being able to open up our eyes, our perspective, and be more inclusive, right? And we can see that in so many different areas of life. And that's what this is. And so when more doctors, more physicians, more psychiatrists, more naturopaths are like, hey, actually, we don't have to be like, this is the way. We can actually join forces to actually take the full holistic approach for people. Then the people who actually like create the laws, create like what's exclusionary, what's not exclusionary, get with the insurance companies, like then it can be brought. And so this is a huge conversation, and it is happening. And how long it's going to take, I don't know. But it enlivens me to know that these are conversations on like the level in which like the people who are needing to make the change for us, right? Us people who are receiving the care, and they're also receiving the care too. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening. All
right, great. Crossing fingers, knocking on wood. Hearing you speak, I feel like, okay, it's just one of those things that has just started in the US now, and in 10 to 20 years, it's going to trickle down in Europe. There's this thing, like people say it as a joke, but it is absolutely actually true that it takes, I mean, I think now it's more 10 years. It used to be 20 years for everything that starts in the US to arrive in Europe. And it's good thing and also bad things. So for example, a couple of years ago, we started having terror attacks, which you had 20 years ago with 9/11. And like the issues with obesity are now at the kind of level in Europe that they were in the US like 15, 20 years ago. You know, it's bad things like that, but also good things for like when a theory that's, you know, promising emerges in the US, it takes 10 to 20 years for it to be translated and arrive here. And for example, one thing that I've noticed is that I study Hellenistic astrology. I think it's an amazing thing. I didn't believe in astrology until I was 35. I was like, I mean, I think I'm still the biggest skeptic that exists. It's just that at the time, up until age 35, no one had managed to show me astrology in a way that I would understand it. And then it happened. Marian Altman showed it to me. I mean, well, because I found her on TikTok. She's actually on, I think, episode 2 on this podcast. I'm really happy I get to speak to all these amazing people. It's an amazing experience. But anyway, like I started following her and listening to her, and it made sense. And then I started studying it. And I recently realized there is not a single source in French for this. Hellenistic astrology has not landed yet. And it's research that was started, I believe, in the 90s, like the foundational texts were re-uncovered, which is interesting because in the Middle East, like in Arabic astrology, then didn't really have a break. So like from the Roman Empire all the way to now, they had like a sort of a continuation, but for us, there was like a massive break because of Christianity, which was very normative for a whole, you know, number of centuries. And I just realized, yeah, like on YouTube, there isn't a single person who makes videos about that. There are only modern astrologers and very few. And I'm like, yeah, like that is something to bring to the French. So yeah, all that to say, I hope that holistic health lands. I'm luckier here in Austria than I would be in France with that, because there is a lot more appetite, I would say, from people for everything natural and maybe a bit esoteric as well. Where in France, it's just like, you know, point blank rejection that everything that's not chemical is not true. And it's just,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I'm really happy that I don't have to live too much in like this amount of toxicity.
And like freedom and empowerment and holistic knowledge and inquiry for all of those humans that are still occupying that land, and may the doctors and like all those people who make the decisions awaken to realize and like actually do some true looking into. And what I want to say as well is that you were saying that someone, like one of the healers that you're working with, she was talking about how it's not her, it's like you doing the healing. And what I'm saying is like, it's not me. It's like the energy in which I'm bringing, the energy in which you're bringing, but then the element in which makes me a little different than some people is that like, I believe that it's God. Like God is coming through and doing the healing. And it's like, maybe like, because I work with prayers, like I do prayers when I'm working with people, like I get right into like just channeling and talking straight to God. And so that's what I really do believe. And so, and listen, you saying that like it takes like 10 to 20, now 10 years to get from us to French, or to Europe, to French, to France, to Europe. Like there's Chronos time, which is like our chronological time, and then there's Kairos time, which I believe is the time of God. And so like, may we be in Kairos time now, you know, like may all the things that we need and all the things that will allow us to like live full, healthy, resource lives happen quickly, happen like in a miraculous minute, you know? And that's what I really, really believe in. Like with all of this stuff happening, people are like, oh, this is going to happen, or like, why isn't this happening? And I'm like, I believe, I see all that is happening. And I'm also speaking Kairos time, Kairos power into this here and now. Like there is so much power that we have through that stream. And that is why, like, I have, like, if you look at my bio, like I have had lots of religious and spiritual study, and I continuously come back to the stability post of Christ and like, and God, and like knowing and believing in that and moving through that. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but like in the last 2 years, there's been like this new age implosion of like these new agers going to Christianity, and like all of this stuff happening within the new age movement. Have you been aware of that?
No,
have you witnessed that?
I'm not aware of that. Maybe you can tell me a bit more. I mean, I'm aware of the new age movement, but really not the recent developments. So I'm really curious.
Yeah. So, you know, it started, Stephen Bankars was like, he was the one that I think created like Science Mind, and it was huge, and he was making like $50,000 a month, and he was like big into new age and like peddling, I'm gonna use peddling it out, and like everyone was eating it up. And then he had this rock bottom moment, and his mom was like, are you willing to accept Christ now? Because he grew up Christian and all of that stuff, and he was like, actually, yeah, you know. And then he like started to change all of that, and more like Doreen Virtue, I don't know if you heard of her, but she was like all about the cards and everything like that. And then she was like, I'm not doing any of these. She basically wanted all of her stuff off the shelf because she turned to Christianity. And so the new age community, like it was just like, oh, those people are crazy, you know, like
that I heard about a bit, but that's I didn't really make sense of it so far.
So everybody's just like, they're crazy. And I'm like, well, the actual question would be like, what actually is it? What did they see? What did they know? What did they find out? And one of the things with like y'all, people who are listening, feel free to go look at Stephen. I'm not promoting him at all. And I just think he's like a really good thread for the new age people to know. So I'm just using this as like an example.
There's just one thing I need to tell you. There's a little rule on this podcast that if someone's name is mentioned, I have to invite them next. And that's actually how you arrived here, because Sharmila Medicine mentioned you in episode 3. So Doreen Virtue is gonna get an email. This man, what's his name again?
Stephen Bankars.
Stephen Bankars is gonna get an email. He might not say yes, but that would be interesting. Just be careful who you mention.
I'm realizing, and I was aware of this earlier. I was like, okay, I'm not going to mention anybody.
It's okay. Like, honestly, I love getting new names. I mean, I was not aware of you until Sharmila mentioned you, and you're awesome. So yeah, like, bring it on. No problem.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so what he discovered through his research were that the roots of the new age movement were satanical. And so like through that, and again, I'm not, go look at it, there's a lot of research online. And so, but that thread is what came in the last 2 years within the new age movement, is that all of these people started to question, like, wait, this is false light, this isn't real, this isn't true. And so they turned to Christianity. And so it's like creating these like really radical people who were like very narcissistic in new age now coming over to Christianity, and it's just been this interesting thing to watch. And so my prayer to like these people who are bridging these gaps is like actually take time to like sit and be with God, you know, like really be with the word of God. You don't have to perform, you don't have to say anything, like take time in quietness and really learn, because you don't know, you know, you have no clue, you have no idea. And just like being able to slow down in that, instead of like feeling like you need to like start proclaiming all of this stuff and like trying to like, you know, pull people to the light side. But yeah, it was wild. It's like people they didn't know who they were anymore. It was like the whole thing with Donald Trump and thinking that he was like gonna win the election, and like a lot of those people were along with the new agers, and so that like rocked their world. So it was just, it's wild. And I'm like watching on the peripheral, but also a part of these communities that are like their worlds are just exploding. And so me, I'm like, I've always been cool with Christ, I've always been centered in Christ, and watching this happen, I'm just like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow as you say it and trying to connect the dots in my head with what I already knew and the new information that you're bringing. Like that makes me think of this thing called pastel QAnon for some reason, because it looks a lot like New Age stuff, but it's super toxic. And yeah, just trying to like make sense of all of that. So my brain is not exactly connecting the next question right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
One thing one thing I've been thinking of as you were speaking is spiral dynamics. Have you studied spiral dynamics? Because it's new to me. I've just fallen into that rabbit hole like a few days ago. And it seems that it explains a lot of the things that I wasn't explaining before. So I wonder if you were familiar with that, with like the meme and the different colors.
Will you speak more about it? Let me see if I am aware of it through you talking more about it.
There is this thing called spiral dynamics. I will completely butcher the whole concept because I'm completely new to it. So apologies to the listeners and to you.
Have grace.
Yeah, originally I was looking for the work of Ken Wilber, then because I found that he had created it, but no, actually he didn't. The person I believe who wrote the book about spiral dynamics is Don Beck, I think, and it's from a philosopher who was called Claire, and I forgot his last name. That's really that bad. That's how new I am. But basically, anyway, they make the case that every human goes through stages of development that they represent with different colors, and everybody starts at what they call beige, is like the basic survival, and then it goes in a spiral, and you have the cool colors for all, like it's always basically moving between two polarities, and one polarity is the me polarity, and the other polarity is the we or the collective. And then as you evolve, you will evolve towards, you know, more egocentric. It doesn't have to be egocentric in a bad way, but more like centered on self, and then more towards centered on community or on group, and then more towards self again, and then more towards community, and then it goes on like that. And I think the colors are beige, purple, red, blue, orange, green, and then you have the second tier, which is yellow and turquoise. But then they were explaining that it's not so much that, for example, feminism is one particular color. You can be a feminist, and depending on the reason why and the motivations, you could be a lot of different colors. So you could, for example, be a green feminist, because green it's actually the meme that is a meme that's very dominant right now, which is the idea that different people have different beliefs and different like background, and that they're all equal. And the biggest problem we have with this situation is that we often don't really reach conclusions, because there isn't a conclusion that would fit for everyone. And because there is no accepted hierarchy, there just is not much being done. But you could be a feminist and be green because you think that all humans are truly equal. You could also be a feminist and be orange. So the orange are more like self-centered and more oriented towards success. Like most entrepreneurs are orange, or like have predominantly orange thinking. You could be a feminist and orange because you would think that, yeah, like I'm a woman and I want to be successful, and I want to be like the first woman to do this, or I want to like, you know, and that would be your motivation. It would be a completely different polarity. You could be doing it in a self-centered way or in a community-centered way. And like pretty much every movement that you can think of, you can find a way of putting it in any color. It's really interesting. It's kind of blows my mind. I hope I'm not explaining it in a weird way, because like I'm saying, I'm new to it, but I think it expands my thinking so much.
I love hearing and feeling your passion, and like you're saying, like, I'm just getting into it, I don't know. And so thank you for explaining it to me. And it feels and seems and sounds like things I know and have studied. And it seems like this framework of social dynamic and relational and personality, like all coming into one. And it's like this way of being able to identify as a me, and also how to be able to like move in and out of the we of it. So yeah, it feels very familiar. And I love that you have found it, and that it's like, I think that anything, well, I'm not going to say anything, but I think that we have been provided with many resources and tools to be able to work and thrive here together.
I totally feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, it's like, for example, what you were saying about Donald Trump and the religion and like all of that, that sounded so much like the blue meme. The blue meme is centered on the collective, and it's basically the idea that you have to sacrifice yourself to either get benefits later or so that the community would benefit. And that's like a stage of evolution that's between two, like it's a collective stage of evolution. And a lot of people, especially the orange one, are very much against the blue meme, because the blue meme does not really want to be successful or doesn't feel their own self. And it's, I don't know, like the whole thing with the followers of Donald Trump, that makes me think of that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I really don't know. It's almost as if like 2020 locked so many people into these mind prisons. We call them Skinner boxes, where like people are just like in these Skinner boxes where they don't want to get out. And it's like, and in that, all of this division happened, especially with like the pandemic. Like all of these people are just like, if you're this person, you just need to die. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, right?
Happening? Yes, and it's like, and it's a poison. It's like this toxin that's taken over this world, and it's like, wait, time out. Like, this is a red flag, and if there's a higher flag than red, like that's the one that we're at. Like, this is a cause for pause and to really reflect on self. Of like, no, this is not okay. We don't want to treat each other like this, and to be this extreme or this extreme, they're both an issue. They're both problematic.
Right.
So yeah.
In spirodynamic, that would be like the green answer to the blue attitude.
You can find me in the middle most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, like, but is it comfortable? Because I find it, well, not always, but like I'm the only person I know locally who is neither pro-vax nor anti-vax. And it's a very uncomfortable position to be in, because both groups think I'm against them somehow. I've managed to like make myself less rough on the edges, just to like every group thinks that I'm with them now.
Yes,
so I'm like,
yes,
okay, great.
Yes.
I don't feel very much in integrity, but at least I have peace.
That's the thing with like the disposition of people just making assumptions. It's like people just assume that you're with them, you know? So it's like, hey, for me, I like to stay in truth. So it's like, if someone asks me, I'll tell them what I think. So there's no need for me to just go around using my word energy, my verbal energy for no freaking reason. Like, hey, I don't want to get into a debate. I don't want to get into a debate. Like, if you want to talk to actually like hear what I'm saying and understand it, and like maybe you're curious, yes, we can talk all day. But if you want to just like argue a point when I'm already seated in like my decision for myself, then it's like that. Or like you're seated for your decision in yourself. Like, I just want to respect it and move on.
Right.
It's like, don't tread on me. I won't tread on you. You do what you feel is right for you, but don't try to make it like a form for everyone.
Yes. Yeah. That's a lot of people struggle with that so much.
Yeah.
It's really hard. But I feel like we've circled back to actually one question I wanted to ask at the beginning, because you said that you will do any work as long as it feels aligned. And I wanted to like just have you speak a bit more about how alignment feels, and also that goes together with boundaries, because you know when you're aligned, it's not as easy to sway you away, but I would say most people don't really have the kind of strength and conviction that you have in your alignment. So if you could speak a bit about that, and perhaps give a little or a few tips for the listeners to help with that, because it's a very frequent situation for people to just not really have this feeling.
Yeah. I'm going to say what really allowed me to be in my center was knowing that like, I didn't need to come from like this wounded healer of like, oh, like I must save everyone, or like I must help everyone. I'm here to help my family, to save them. Like once I retired that story and was like, wait, this isn't all on me. I actually have like, God is here for me. It got me out of like thinking that everything was me, very narcissistic and self-centered. Like I was able to be like, actually, there's someone else for you. You know, like
Right.
there's someone else that can support you. There's someone else that can help you. And I don't mind giving you references, like, yeah, you know, or like if I'm working with someone and it's like, do this modality instead of this modality, then I can move from that. And it's the same centeredness that allows me to be able to flow and to be able to say no. And so
Right.
I think that I have like a leg up almost because I worked in mental health. And if you have no boundaries in that world, you will
Right.
deplete yourself.
Yes.
You will be burnt out. You will be ran over. You will be in a mental hospital, you know? And like, I was very clear on that. And so I had to be boundaried up. And it took a lot for me to learn that. And so, and it doesn't mean that I then become this rigid person that's just like, no, right? It's like being
Right.
able to truly know what is a yes for me and what is a no for me. And that takes practice. And I always tell people that, like, in the beginning, you may err on the side of being rigid, but just always allowing grace to come back. You know, like you can always say no and then choose to say yes later, you know, but if
Right.
you say
That's a
yes
great
and it's
tip.
not a true yes, yeah. If you say yes and it's not a true yes, then you'll have all of those like
Yeah, you can say no
emotional,
later, but it's going to be much harder.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that would be what I would say. And for me personally and in my professional career, like I used to teach Reiki. I used to teach at a Reiki school. I used to be in an ancient mystery school. I was initiated high priestess and like all of these different things. And I taught the teachings of the school. And I like got initiated as a shaman within the school. And I was like, wait, none of this is actually what I need to be doing. None of
Right.
this is right for me. And even when I would teach Reiki, like I would tell people that, you know, it isn't like I would always turn them back to the truth, even when I was teaching it. And then like, even in my healings and like doing, like we would do within this ancient mystery school, we would do like DNA repairs. We would do like all of these clearings of like attachments and like all of these things working in these other dimensions. And I was just like, wait, like, wait. And so for people who, because I feel like the world is hungry for God, like the world is hungry and searching for a Messiah. And so they get lost in these gurus, they get lost in like plant medicine, they get lost in all these things, like searching and trying to quench this thirst. That's like, actually, none of these things were created for that. So it's like, if we can pause and discern that if we've been doing the same thing, we've been down this like plant medicine trap, we've been down this like going to these same like personal development things for 10 years and we're not actually getting the results that we want. And I mean sustainable long-term results, because I was
Right.
in one of those communities, like deep in them, and you may have results for 3 months, but what happens when you're no longer plugged in to that? So it's like these addictions that we get lost in. So it's like, if we can actually take time to pause, stop all things, reevaluate, like really be with ourselves, then we can remember like our truth again. But if we're constantly being covered up in all these things, all these teachings, all these searchings, then we're just collecting and covering it more and more and more.
Right.
So
Yeah.
pausing.
Yeah, it tends to create a lot of clutter. Like I'm very interested in all different modalities. I think they'll probably be right for different people, although once the narcissism kicks in, it becomes complicated to sort out what's what. But I do find that if I learn more techniques, I do end up with more clutter and then I become less able to use them, which is a problem. I mean, I do get
Yeah.
long-term result. Like every year that passes in my life is better than the previous one, which I'm afraid not everybody can say that, especially currently with COVID having just, turned many people's world upside down. So I'm grateful for that, but it takes so much mindfulness. It's
It
pretty
does.
impressive. Like, yeah, I would agree when you say just, taking a step back and being just, pausing and being mindful and just finding the real truth, if you can, or leaning towards what's calling you, basically. Like my word for 2022 is lean, because I want to trim away the fat and just get rid of the things that I don't need, as well as also lean into the direction. And it's a practice, right? It's not really something that it's one and done. It's just all the time.
Yeah, for sure. It is a continual lean in, lean out.
Yes.
I believe that for me, like what was really important for me is that I was doing all of these certifications from this place of like, as a Black woman, I need to prove that I can do that
Oh, that's a
I'm
bad place to
certified
be
to do
in.
these things.
Yes.
You know, it's not, it just was. It's not good, it's not bad, it just was. And so that was the place that I was
But
operating
low-key
from.
toxic.
Since
Like not good or bad, but low-key toxic.
it's cultural. It's as a
Right.
Black woman, the culture says, this world says that like you
Yeah.
are not good enough. So it's like it's
even worse
draining.
perhaps than other people, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So
Because
anyway,
it's a widespread plague. But anyway, you agree that it's
yeah.
being not good enough is not good.
Well, no, I just want to continue from
Sorry.
what I was saying. So yeah, you're fine. So I was coming from that place of like, I need to prove, I have to like, there is literally proof that in this world as a Black woman, you have to have like 5 times more than like a white woman, like
Right.
to prove that you are capable. And so like, I was like, okay, I need to have these things. Like I need to be able to show that I can sit at the table and not just like, God has equipped me with these gifts. Like this is enough. It's like, no, I need to have this certification. I need to have this certification.
Right.
And then you go out into the spiritual world beyond color. Like people live like that from like, I have to prove, I need to do all these things. And then it becomes this addiction of like, oh, it's my personal growth. And so when I woke up and I was like, actually, and then it became this like egotistical thing that like, oh, I'm this, I had this initiation, and oh, I'm that. Like when I woke up to those realizations, I was like, I don't need any of these things. God has already equipped me with these gifts that I have from me. I don't have to cover them up with another name. That was the first reason why I got attuned in Reiki, was because I had these healing gifts that moved through me. But I was like, if I just say that to people, they won't understand it. So I'm going to slap the name Reiki on it as I'm doing these things, and it'll allow people to understand it, which makes sense because people do want to know what they're getting into. So it's like, all of those things. And then when I was just like, no, I'm going to move from God and I'm just going to do what God is having me to do. And that gave me like the true freedom. It's like, none of the other stuff was like toxic or anything. It was just what I was moving through, what I was like, where I was and where I was like, what allowed me to like learn things, you know? But then when I realized that like, wait, it's okay. Like just move from what is innately in you. And I can say that that's not true for everybody, you know, like everybody, I feel like there was this thing that was going around, and I've always believed this, that so many people are trying to steal other people's gifts, other people's missions, other people's visions. It's like, we don't all have the same one. So like if Sally Joe down the street is like this masterclass teacher that's teaching people how to sell things online, like that's not also what you're to do. So like, that's another reason for pause of like, wait, what is my medicine? What am I here to do? So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I feel that's so relatable. I mean, I'm not a Black woman myself, although as a trans person, I do feel like I'm never good enough either from a social point of view, because we do have a bit of like a visibility struggle, which I guess is also the case for Black women. I mean, the others not as represented as any other group, really. So yeah, something we have in common, I guess. Not saying that it's the same, not at all, but it feels relatable to some degree.
It's not the same. It isn't the same. Like there's one that's
absolutely
this historical,
not.
This historical struggle, and then one that is like it also has been around for some time, but it's like newer and gaining traction. And I think that like that has been something like when I identified and like was in that whole community, that was something that like I always struggle with like how to be able to represent both, you know, like how to be able to stand up for like the rights of Black people and the voice of Black people, and also like the queer community. And it's like, these are two separate experiences and they are not the same. But as someone who actually has like lived in those experiences, it's tough to be able to move in and out of them. And I would have conversations with coworkers that are trans, like identifying or non-binary, and it's like we aren't the same. We aren't having the same experience. What you are having, like the experience you're having, is very valid and it's very real. And it sucks. And I look forward to like a world where in an internal system where like it doesn't have to be like that. And also Black people have been going through this whole thing for so long. And I want there to be equity. I want there to be not even equality. I just I want reparations, you know, like
that would be good.
This world.
Yeah.
We
I mean,
built this world,
it's
so.
not mutually exclusive either. You have people who are Black and queer or Black and trans.
Right, that's what I was speaking into
So
in the
yeah,
beginning, was
yeah,
like the both of them. But
yeah,
then like even in those bodies being Black and trans, you're also Black.
yeah. Of course, of
You
course.
know, like you're Black. You can't hide that. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I'm not Black. You know, you can't wake up one day and be like, I'm not trans, no matter how cis
It's easier to
identifying you
hide,
may
though.
look.
I mean,
Yeah,
I remember when I was dating a Black girl, I was like, yeah, like if we compare our situations, it's easier for me to hide it than it is for you, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah, there's no hiding. That's what I think about when I think about like my Jewish friends and like Jewish community. They're like, oh, I'm Jewish, and like, yeah, that was atrocious, you know, like that was
Of
terrible
course.
what y'all experienced. And I know people who came to America and they changed their last name, and you would not know they're Jewish. You don't
Yeah.
have that privilege as a Black person.
Yes, totally not.
And like I don't want to, like, I believe in the power and the empowerment of Black people. I believe in, like, there are so many Black people that are walking this planet that have done wonderful things, are doing wonderful things, are making great amounts of money. Like, we're not victims. And it would be illogical and delusional to deny like the history and what is still alive in our
Right,
world.
of course, because it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect segue. And we're almost out of time. So that's a perfect segue to my traditional second to last question.
Ooh, okay.
Which I ask to everybody, and is it getting better? Like, are things getting better? Do you see an uptrend? Do you see an upswing in the situation in general for your community, for the people you work with? For you personally, I'm guessing, you're a very empowered person, so you're probably going to be fine either way. But in general, like, are things getting better for the world?
I don't know if I would use the word better. And there are so many variables and so many dynamics and so many things that go into the evolution of our society. So I can't speak to if things are getting better, but what I do know is that people are getting bolder, people are getting wiser, people are pulling on community more if we're choosing to. And in my community, I'm seeing that. And people are like pulling on their roots more to be able to be healthier and to know and to be wise. So I do know that those things are going, and I hope that like we all rise together, but I cannot see everything to say that we're getting better. That would not be. I can't speak to that.
I'm starting to see a trend among my guests. I think I ask the same question to everyone. And I mean, I don't have a very big sample. This is just example 10, but because the answer you gave is so similar to the answer that Joris Lochen gave, and I think you're the only two Black people that I've had so far on the podcast. Not the only two people of color, because I've had other people, but I'm starting to see a trend that perhaps Black people would tend to give a more nuanced answer, and other people tend to answer more towards a clearer yes. And I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true. I mean, maybe it's just random, but what do you think about that?
Yeah. I don't know if it's like racial. I just think that like some people want to lean to like the goodness. Like some people live in these like bubbles of like everything's good, everything's positive, but it's like I live in reality, like, and I also believe in the good and the power, but I know that this world is too nuanced to think that me and my like just mindness can see the entirety of everything and to say an absolute yes. Like that would not be wise.
I mean, it's rarely absolute, but it's more like, yeah, I think so. It's because I don't know how to answer it myself. Like, I mean, I know that for myself, I will be fine either way. But yeah, like when I look around, I'm like, oh, really?
I'm like, what are the variables? Like, what is tomorrow going to bring? What I'll say is like at the end of 2019, I had a vision that like something very traumatic was about to happen to us, and that we all needed to know like these fundamental ways of survival. And I mean, that's all I talked about to my friends for the last 2 months of 2019. And they were like, you're insane. What are you talking about? And I'm like, no, I feel this coming. Like I felt it coming. And so I went into fasting, and I was like, okay, ready. Didn't know what it was going to look like, but it's like, here we are. Right. So it's like, I didn't even like people who are oracles. It's like, there are so many variables that will happen from second to second. And so I'm just like, I don't know, but like, I believe in Kairos time, and I would love for miracles to continue to happen. I believe in miracles. I believe in goodness. I believe in God. And like, we're going to all see.
All right. That's a great conclusion. Wait, I have lost Imani. This is annoying. I will see too if she comes back. Because I wanted to ask her where she can be found, but either way, there will be a link in the description, in the show notes below, or in the description on YouTube. So in case Imani is really lost and she doesn't come back, I will say thank you for joining me today. Thank you for joining us. It was an amazing episode. So if you've enjoyed it, please leave a review on your podcast platform or a comment on YouTube, because this will help us find more listeners and also more awesome guests like Imani to make more awesome episodes. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.